We all know how important having good monitors is to hearing what's going on in your mix, and that's because we need the flat frequency response to hear exactly what's happening, rather than making it sound nice. Studio monitors are designed to let you hear details. And you can hardly see a photo of a pro studio without them proudly displaying their monitoring system. And if you've ever been to a studio with a huge set of wall-mounted speakers, you'll know just what a difference it makes to the mixing process. And that's obviously not something we can recreate in home studios. We can only try to get as close to a flat frequency response as possible. And it's also nice to have something that can create enough volume if you want to hear it loud, because that does change the perception of your track, even if it's not recommended to mix at high levels. But the ultimate goal of manufacturers who make stuff for project studios, home studios, or even pro studios is not just to make them as flat as possible, but in some cases to make them as compact as possible. These are my Dynaudio LYD lid, it's maybe 7s, and they're really nice. They're about £800, but they are quite large. They take up quite a fair bit of room, and to set them up properly takes even more room. The ideal position for these is almost 40% the length of the room and between 1 and 2 meters from the listening position. So these need a fair amount of space if you want to use them properly according to manufacturer's specifications and the like. You need a fairly big room, which brings me to these. These are the iLoud Micro Pros from IK Multimedia, and I had got in touch with IK Multimedia because I've heard some others, the smaller ones in this range, well, the original ones, the iLoud Micros, and a couple of others in the range at a few events. I really like the sound of them. I've been looking for something smaller, so I got in touch and asked if I could borrow a pair, basically, and they said, if you hang on a while, we'll send you the brand new iLoud Micro Plus that haven't even come out yet, which I was more than happy to do. So yeah, they have sent me these, but I did want them because I have heard them before. So in this, I've really, well, the last few days really been taking a real look at the Dynaudios versus these to see if something actually that this much smaller could do the job just as well. The Dynaudios are lovely speakers, and you can see how much larger they are in this shot here, but they can't fit in a bag like the iLouds can. But being compact is no good if they don't sound any good, and I'm happy to report that these sound pretty amazing for the size of them. Not even for the size of them. Compared to these, my first reaction was simply wow. So let's take a look at what they are and what you get with them. These are an upgrade from the original iLoud Micros. These are the iLoud Micros Plus, as I said earlier, and that's a hell of a tongue twister. That's about my 10th attempt at saying that. But they're about £550, whereas the original Micros were about £300. So what do you get extra for your money? Well, you get onboard DSP for their arc room correction system, along with this mic to take the reference levels. So you're effectively getting a version of this. It's their Arc Studio. This is the breakout box. This in itself is about £300. This is a great little system, actually. I use this in the studio with my Neumann KH310s, and it really does make a difference. So yeah, we get a lovely little version of this. In this case, the DSP is in the monitors themselves, and you can use this, the X Monitor software, to record the room effect and to correct it, or you can do a quick correction with these without the software using this calibration button on the back. And these are twice the volume of the originals, and they really do pack a punch. We do lose the Bluetooth connectivity, and we lose the connection that you had on the originals from the left to the right speaker, but that's because these have both got an independent USB-C for the processing, so just like any other normal pro speaker system, really, you have a cable for the left and a cable for the right, or a cable for the left and a cable for the right. You can connect these with an XLR or an RCA, so that's for something like a standard CD or DVD player. Got a little volume knob on the back, a power button, and some controls on the right hand side here. The top one here is for a desk-based effect, or the desk effect. So basically when you're sitting it on a desk, you get an increase in mid frequencies, so it compensates for them, knocks them out. We've got a low frequency extension button down there to knock out anything below 50 or below 80 Hz, and we've got a high EQ and a low EQ. So you can use all that if you're not using the DSP correction. On the bottom we've got this thread, so you can connect it to a mic stand or a lighting stand, for example, and then we get this nice little hinged bit there, and that's so that you can point it up towards your face if it's low on a desk. Calibrating these couldn't be easier. We can use the input in the back to plug the mic into. We hold this button here for a few seconds till it starts flashing, and then it runs through the calibration routine and it stores it inside the speaker itself. Or we can use the X Monitor software. Here's the X Monitor software then. We can see it's identified the two speakers. Just make sure that you make sure you've got the left and the right correct with the serial numbers, and these are connected obviously by the USB-C. So we calibrate them really simply. We just stick a mic on a microphone stand. It's the best way to do it so that you don't get any influences of your body. Set it at ear height, and then we play a calibration signal at each of these 4 points, and that's it. Click capture point and it plays the calibration signal. From that, it creates this. This is the result. This is what we're hearing in the room through those speakers, and you can see here we've got this weird sort of resonant frequencies, and this is because it's a square room and I can actually hear these frequencies as I talk. I know they're there, so it's good to see them. I take them out in post-production, but the low mids are a little bit high and the highs are quite nice and flat already actually. But after we've done the correction, this is what the speakers are outputting, or this is the corrected signal. This is what we'll be hearing rather than the green in the room. So this is the corrected signal for the room. I've done it on one speaker here and I've linked the two speakers together. So I'm using the left calibration curve on the right. I should really do it again and have them both, so have it much more accurate using both speakers. That'd be 8 points, each of the 4 points twice. If you're just using the speakers to calibrate themselves, you just use a single point, so you can actually do it a lot quicker. You don't need the software at all. But if we click up here, we can see that we get different options for different monitoring systems. Down there, white 80s, that's got to be NS10s, hasn't it? And that makes it a lot more mid-range sounding, and you can see here it looks a bit more mid-range sounding. And if we go to the smartphone, you can see we've lost all the bass. But this is just nice to be able to hear what it sounds like in different situations. Check that your mix sounds okay through a lot of different systems. Down here we can change the contour as well, so we can edit that contour. We can change the default, a bit of extra bottom. We could change it manually up here. So there's loads to play with in there, but I've got to say I just tend to leave it on flat. Have a little play every now and then with the different speakers, so you can hear what it would sound like in different situations perhaps, so you can just play with your mix a little bit more. It does give something else to play with, but as I say, I tend to leave it on flat while I'm playing around, and then once I've finished something, want to hear it a little bit better maybe, or just hear what it would sound like on an iPhone or through a TV, perhaps, because my YouTube videos are often played on a TV. It's just quite good to have that flexibility there. Playing you what they actually sound like is a physical impossibility, isn't it? Because obviously you go through your speakers. So how do I demonstrate what they're doing? Well, I've recorded the Dyno audios using the Arc Studio as well in the same position. Here I've got the left and the right. If we just look at the left, for example, I'm still recording those 3 big peaks that we get in the room. Come back to the X Monitor off the iLouds, and there they are. So DIN audio, iLouds, we're getting similar responses, but obviously slightly different because they're different speakers. But again, after and before. So this is using the Arc Studio box, which again, you can test different monitors on, but it does look very similar to what we're getting here. Here's a track played through the X monitoring system and the Arc Studio played back into itself, so you can hear the effects that it's having on the signal. It's not going to sound anything like what these speakers sound like. Obviously, that would be ridiculous, but at least it gives you an idea of the differences in the tones that it creates. all in, I'm super impressed by these. The Dynaudios will be retiring from these duties. These are small enough to sit on the desk with some big keyboards, which the Dynaudios aren't. I've got to get stands and stuff like this, so it just becomes a bit more of a hassle. These, to me, after doing A, B, A, B, A, B, they don't sound quite as open as the Dynaudios. They are different speakers after all, so they don't sound identical, but for what I'm doing in here, absolutely fine. You know, in my studio, if I want to do something real pro, I suppose, I've got £3,500 monitors in there, I'd use them. But for mixing stuff, for arranging stuff, for going to your mates and doing bits and bobs, these are like, I don't know, all I can say is highly recommended. Do have a play with them, do have a little go. One thing I did notice though, if you're using the RCA rather than the XLR, there's a little click if there's a gap in the music. So it's okay for playing CDs, DVDs, or playing a set, a DJ set for example. If you're playing individual instruments, this sort of, it's looking for the XLR signal all the time it seems, and then it clicks in when it hears this. So you do get a little audible click and a little delay. So if you're recording something and you keep on stopping what you're playing and looking for another kick drum, looking for another snare, looking for another synth sound, or just messing about, you know, it does have this audible little click, which is slightly annoying, but you would just use the XLR anyway, surely, because that's what you use on normal speakers. So other thing that I noticed was, if I'm playing something like a really low sine, these will start freaking out and farting a bit more, you know, a bit earlier than the Dynaudios would with that high level. But then again, they are a bit smaller, and I think that's probably just the laws of physics. So all in all though, yeah, recommended, all positive. Take a look at them, and yeah, I'm sort of stunned. I've been showing everyone that comes round how good they are, especially for the size. They're absolutely staggering. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was useful. I hope you got something from it. If you did, please think about subscribing, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. This channel is funded by my wonderful patrons, who for the price of less than a dodgy coffee a month get access to patches, samples, tutorials, and all sorts of other little goodies. Also, do take a look at my starskycar.com website. Again, I've got patches, samples, stuff to buy, free stuff as well. As I always say, do pick up some of the cheaper bits and bobs. It all does help to support the channel. So thanks very much for staying to the very, very end, and I will see you next time.